The time is just gone, 8 minutes past 8 a.m. this morning, here on Salam Media, and we're kicking off this morning reflecting on Hajj and the Hajj experience, but more importantly, looking at those who are controlling the entire Hajj process. And we are talking about Saudi Arabia, and there are reports that have it that Saudi Arabia is acting as though it has ownership over the fifth pillar of Islam. Joining us this morning is activist Dr. Quraysha Sooliman. Dr. Quraysha, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome this morning to Salam Media, to News and Views.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi. Jazakallah khair for having me, and I'm sorry about the StreamYard issues.
No, it's fine. It's not a problem as long as we can hear you loud and clear now. With the Hajj season over, and particularly after the pandemic, and looking at Hajj and reflecting on Hajj, there have been many questions raised, and we've seen a number of changes coming through as far as the Hajj process is concerned as a result of the pandemic. But more importantly, we know Saudi Arabia has been controlled for a very, very long time. And looking at some of the new developments that had taken place, we've heard about the Hajj booking fiasco. We're talking about the Mutawif system, and just looking at where Saudi Arabia sees itself, or how it sees itself as managing, controlling. But here we are talking about total ownership of the fifth pillar of Islam, Dr. Quraysha.
It's a big problem, Ayat, because if you really look at it, I mean, I managed to get involved in the system a little bit this year. After many years, I came back, to assess, because people were asking me for help to raise certain issues. As you know, in South Africa, we've been battling with the monopoly of Sahok, which is considered a Hajj ministry in Saudi Arabia, and South Africa is considered a Hajj mission in Saudi Arabia, and South Africa is not a Muslim country, so it should not have that status. In that, I started to question and look at things, and you saw it's phenomenal, the escalation in prices, firstly. So it's obvious that the entire Hajj concept has been made into a business, a capitalist enterprise for a Saudi Arabian state, which is obviously almost bankrupt, or in many ways is already bankrupt. But of course, the petrodollars are all sitting in the US in the private ownership of certain individuals. So, when you look at even the Mutawif system, if you look at the Mujamala visas, people who were given Mujamala visas, there was only one single package. You had to go online to choose a package, to pay for the package, and then you would get your visa. And that package was 14,000 riyals. Multiply that by 4, basically the conversion rate, and it worked out to about 63,000 rands for absolute rubbish. I mean, if I'm telling you in terms of accommodation that was provided. So there's no choice. It's obvious it's a monopoly. They're deciding you take it or you leave it, kind of an understanding. What does that say? That says that we are the bosses, we control it. And if you want to go for Hajj, this is the way it's going to be done. What they did to the UK and to the US is unforgivable. So many travel agents, hundreds and thousands of people who are employed in these businesses, whose risk comes from servicing the programs, and they do a damn good job. Let's not deny it. They do a far better job than what the Saudi authorities will do, as you saw from the reports that came out. And not only that, in many ways, the Saudis who are employed in these systems are a law unto themselves. I've seen it years and years and years, over and over again, how laws change overnight. Things change overnight. They decide what they want and when they want, and who do you question? For example, all of these people who paid phenomenal prices on the Mutawif system didn't get what they had paid for, and now how do you get it back? Last year, when people went for Umrah from South Africa, also had to follow a similar kind of Mutawif system, pay online, etc. And then suddenly the borders were closed, and they couldn't go for Umrah. Till now, there is no refund for these people. I mean, this is an Islamic pillar. This is a pillar that, establishes ethics. If you look at the entire ethical foundation of Hajj, it sets the ground for humanity. And what we're seeing is everything but humanity from the Saudi side. What we're seeing is a capitalistic, exploitative process that is happening, and it's really disgusting.
Well, it certainly is, Quraysha. And the thing is, we're talking about the term Kharimul Haramain, because this is the term, this is the title that they've given to themselves. And when one looks at the definition of this title, we're talking about someone who is of service to humanity, someone who is of service to the Hujjaj, because this is exactly how we would define this term. But as you mentioned, exploiting, looking at high prices, looking at a capitalist system, and it is clear that Hajj is now seen as tourism. It is seen as a racket. It is seen as a
Mhm.
money-making racket. We've seen what has happened with Mina, Arafat, just the 5 days of Hajj alone. When one looks at figures of 7,500 riyals for 5 days of Hajj, and this is on the non-special services camp. The special services, we're talking even more. We're talking about 18,000 riyals, like 75,000 rand over a
20,000.
5-day period.
20,000. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so we're looking at, just for 5 days, you don't even pay these rates in a 10-star hotel.
Exactly. And not only that, Inat, you must bear this in mind. They say 5 days, but it's not really 5 days. On the 8th, you go to Mina, right? But you leave that on the ninth morning, you're in Arafat the whole day. On the ninth, you come back, you're in Muzdalifah. You get to Mina only on the 10th. So you've used Mina for one day, basically. And then many programs, they after they use on the 10th, they leave Mina. They go back to Azizia or they go back to Makkah or whatever it is. Because, I mean, it's not wajib to stay in Mina. So and what are you paying for? You're paying for a tent and mattresses. And when they talk about food, I mean, like, is it the kind of meal that you get in a 7-star hotel? It's not even that. But not only that, again, why the emphasis on food and luxury when Hajj is teaching you everything of the opposite? That's why you come in 2 pots, unsewn, roughly cut. Everybody looks the same, wears the same, because there is no status. But this process of Camp D and Camp B and Camp A is creating statuses. So it is the direct opposite of what Hajj is supposed to inculcate, which shows that it's anti-Islam. And that's why in my tweets I said, we do not want Saudi-style Islam. So first they forced Wahhabism down our throat, which was an ideology. Now MBS decided that Wahhabism is not the way to go. So they've gone completely secular in a way. That if you see Saudi Arabia, it's actually where Turkey was 20 years ago. Rushing into that secular state, the whole identity, dropping the Islamic values, everything. So they've gone from one extreme, which is extreme Islam, in terms of a Wahhabist ideology, to another extreme, which is a secularist ideology, focused on capitalism, distancing religion. And in a way also, if you look at the secular system, it is to make religion unnecessary or not a reality in the life. So remove religion from the lives of people, which is what modernity has done. And in both cases are horrific. They have horrific consequences for the Ummah. And Muslims better wake up and realize what this is about. And I'll tell you what my daughter said to me. She said, "Mommy, if ordinary people can't afford to go for Hajj," and that's exactly what has happened now. Ordinary people who could, realistically go for Hajj before, a few years ago, if they can't go for Hajj now, all of us should boycott Hajj. And I think that's what it should be.
Yes, and also Quraysha, looking at MBS, and it is clear that his fingerprints are very visible as far as Hajj is concerned and the Hajj process goes. And also at the same time, looking at this Mutawif system, we know what had happened in the UK, the debacle, people not getting their visas, not getting their e-tickets, unable to board flights. I mean, these were problems, and then getting to the Holy Land again, not what they had actually paid for, as far as their accommodation goes, and also looking at how the entire logistic system was handled. But even worse, when one looks at a system that is owned by an Indian travel agency. And this
Oh,
Mutawif system managed by a government, by a ruling party like the BJP, that has shown hostility, that is guilty of, to the point of genocide, I would say almost genocide, as far as Muslims are concerned in certain aspects.
yeah, I mean, did tweet that. I mean, I tweeted the Hajj ministry, King Salman, etc., and I said, you're putting Hajj in the hands of a genocidal state, that is killing Muslims. And that's what I'm saying, in my mind, in the ordinary mind of ordinary Muslims who are looking at this, where the truth is beginning to be uncovered, you should ask, are my guys actually Muslim? Really, I mean, because they're doing everything anti-Islam. They're doing everything to harm the Muslims. And Hajj is so sacred for so many people. There are other people who said, we saved our whole lives. It doesn't matter if we're being exploited or whatever, but I need to go because if I don't go now, I'm never going to go again. So people are in a catch-22 situation. They feel they have to go. They need to go. They've saved this money. But at the same time, it is so unethically done. It is so, there's no words. There's no words to describe what we feel about what they have done and what the government is doing. And unless they don't reform their processes, I don't know if they're going to succeed. But on the other hand, at the same time, I think they're banking on the fact that Muslims generally are apathetic, apolitical, that we don't make a fuss. We don't, we just accept and swallow everything. I really hope that time is going to change in Ayat, where we realize that if we don't start protesting these things, if we don't stand up, if we don't, complain about this and make a noise about it, it's going to get more difficult. Ultimately, Hajj is going to be something that is going to be for the rich only. If you look at the way the mujamalas have been done also, like by one example, it was only the rich people who went. Majority of rich people who went, well, I'm talking about from a South African point of view, because I know somebody was there and said, we saw these families, they were at this five-star hotel, etc. And they all said basically their visa cost them 64,000, 63,000. The reality is they paid that package, they got the visa, and then just dumped the whole package and did their own private, enterprises there in the kingdom to facilitate themselves. But only the rich can do this. And that's why this article in Middle East Monitor is so spot on. Middle East Eye, so it's so spot on because it shows that Hajj is now being facilitated to cater for a particular clientele. And generally, rich people also don't complain as long as they're benefiting from it. It's a whole system of patronage networks, Let's service the people who are not going to fight back at us, who have the money, will pay and will come. Look at this. Saudi Arabia made a phenomenal amount of money despite the small numbers this year. And so they're going to say, why should we bother? It's less numbers. It's a less burden. And then the question again, which is very good, the term that he uses in the article is supposed to be about service. But look at governance throughout the world, United. It's no longer about service. It's about entitlement. We're entitled to this. It's on our property. It belongs to us. We're going to put minimum effort and get maximum benefit. And that's exactly what Saudi Arabia did this year. Minimum effort, maximum benefit. They escalated the prices right across the board. It's run as a monopoly, as an enterprise. But like you said, this joining with the Hindu government that is really a genocidal government that has caused tremendous harm to Muslims, and they don't blink an eye and they're not ashamed about it. That alone should tell you, you should question what kind of people are these and why are we still supporting them? Why haven't the Muslims come together to say we're boycotting Hajj?
Exactly. And the key issue also, Dr. Quraysha, is holding an entire Muslim world to a ransom through an institution of Hajj and to a large extent Umrah as well. And also at the same time, pursuing and promoting a certain agenda. Now, we know for the fact, and one thing that stood out for me in this year's Hajj is the Arafat khutbah. And this is the most important khutbah for the year. It is delivered once a year. And again, there have been huge question marks that have been raised with the person who had actually delivered the khutbah, Dr. Muhammad Al-Isa. And he has been known, and I've seen many reports come through, he has been known to be pro-MBS, pursuing the MBS agenda, and also to the extent where he's been talking about, he's been pretty close to people like Donald Trump. And also at the same time, he's made certain statements with regards to particularly Israel, relationships between Saudi Arabia. And these are the people now that have been appointed and even to deliver an important khutbah like the Arafah khutbah.
Okay, so I'll be very honest with you. I have stopped listening to the Saudi khutbahs, Jummah, Eid, whatever it is. So you can understand why I have stopped listening to them. But what you're saying is possible. Why is it difficult to believe? Obviously, it's the same like the ANC government. It's cadre deployment. That's what's happening in Saudi Arabia. They're taking out people and they're replacing them with cadres. People who, in South Africa, the African terminology during apartheid was Yabas people. These are Yabas people. These are scholars for dollars. We've seen it over and over again in Saudi Arabia from previous scholars who would pass fatwas. I'm not even going to take names right now, but initially when I started getting into the politics of the country and I started to look at certain things, These are people, I call them scholars for dollars, because they give you fatwas according to, how you want them to give fatwas. And it's very, very disappointing. In everything that we've seen, there's a whole turnaround is to take away from what Islam essentially is. They're destroying the authenticity of Islam. And more scary, perhaps for me, that the most frightening part is that by going through this Mutawif system, they're denying the world's Muslims the right to practice Islam the way they want to practice. So if you come through this Mutawif system, you're not coming with your spiritual guide. You're not coming with a community that you know and share with and you understand and you trust. You're not coming with religious scholars who have fermented, or who, not fermented, but who have sedimented and developed your Islamic understanding. You now have to follow a Saudi understanding of Islam. And that is not only treacherous, but it is dangerous, because you're taking away the authenticity of Islam that people have grown up with in terms of their own communities. So, and we have the different mazhabs. So people practice their Islam, they will follow the rites of Hajj according to their mazhabs. There's nothing wrong with that. If that is the way they have grown up, and that is the way, as long as they don't diss or look down upon another mazhab. But the bottom line is people have different ways of practicing Islam. There's differences in our deen, and we understand there's khair in that differences. And the Saudis are taking this away. They're going to try and push down your throat their interpretation of Islam. And their interpretation of Islam right now is really problematic, considering that they have consented to removing things from, education systems, from their textbooks, verses that they deal with, for example, jihad, etc. So they're taking away from the real truth, the haqq of the deen, which teaches justice. They're taking away the whole concept of justice. And they're bringing in injustice. And then you must ask now, do I want to go for Hajj under those circumstances where I can't even practice my Islam the way I want to, or the way I choose to, or the way I have, considered it fundamental to my development as a human being?
Well, Dr. Quraysha, unfortunately, time is of the essence. There's just so much more we can unpack, and I'm sure over a period of time there will be a lot more issues that will arise. And particularly at this particular topic, inshallah, at some point in time we will revisit this topic. But for now, Jazakallah, shukran to you for your time with us this morning. We wish you all the best, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. And Jazakallah for raising the topic.
Dr. Quraysha Sooliman with us this morning. We're going to go for a break, and we're going to be staying with Hajj, and we're talking about alleged walking Hajj scammer. We're talking about Shahid Stakala, unpacking with television talk show host. We're talking with Faisal Sayed.